Over these last few weeks, I have been aiming to use these videos as a way of speaking hope into everything that has been going on during this pandemic. Times have been difficult and our life has been restricted in many ways. And we need the encouragement to believe that life will get better for us. But as I think over the last 2 weeks, and the events and the conversation that has followed the death of George Floyd, I am reminded that Christians are not just called to have hope, but to be hope for this world. When God fills us with His love, it's not for us to hold on to and keep to ourselves, but we're to pour it out on this world that is around us. Because for so many people in our world and in our community, life is always difficult, daily having to deal with racist attitudes and prejudice actions. And we need to speak, and we need to stand, and we need to do what we can so that life will get better for everybody. One of the verses that's been really on my heart as I've been praying and reflecting over this in these last few days is Matthew chapter 5, verse 6. Where Jesus says, "Blessed are those who hunger and thirst for righteousness, for they will be filled." This is one of what we call the Beatitudes, where Christ outlines the characteristics of His kingdom people. And the Beatitudes run completely against the values of our world. And when they are lived out, they turn culture completely upside down. And the original hearers would have been shocked as Jesus sat down on the mountain and declared the blessing it was to be poor, to mourn, to show mercy, and to hunger and thirst for righteousness. Righteousness is one of those church words that we maybe don't use too often in everyday conversation. But it simply means to live a life that pleases God. And there are two main ideas wrapped up as Jesus uses that word here. And the first has to do with a moral rightness, which means to obey God's commands. And I think for a lot of us, when we hear that, we think it means I must not do anything wrong. But that's only half of it, because we also have to do what is right. Moral righteousness is not just the absence of sin, but the presence of doing what is good. As the Apostle Peter says, we must turn away from evil and do good. Search for peace and work to maintain it. So it's not enough just to say, well, I'm not a racist, so then I'm righteous, if we fail to help those that are victims of prejudice and discrimination. And that brings us on to the second aspect of the meaning of the word righteousness, which is connected to social justice. Because the truth is, our world does not treat everybody equally. Some of us are given a head start in life, while others are given extra obstacles to overcome. And it's just not fair. So many people are still trying to lift themselves up by pushing other people down. But Jesus taught us a different way. He showed us that the blessed life comes by lowering ourselves and by lifting other people up. So the question is, how hungry are you for righteousness? How hungry are you for personal morality and social justice? I saw a great image of hunger this week. As many of you will be aware, after weeks of being closed, some of the fast food restaurants have begun to reopen this week, but just for drive-through. And the queues of cars have been massive as people who have got fed up with their homemade sourdough bread have been desperate to satisfy their craving for their favorite hamburger. And in one of these queues was a man standing with a cardboard box with wheels painted on. He wasn't going to let the fact that he didn't have a car stop him from getting fed. He was going to do whatever it took. Jesus says we are blessed if we have that kind of hunger for the justice of others, that desire to defend the vulnerable, that determination to end racism. And of course, Jesus wasn't introducing a new concept. We see the heart of God through the whole of the Old Testament scriptures. When God rescued his people out of slavery, he told them to never treat others the way that they had been treated. But then when they forgot, God sent his prophets to remind them. Like the prophet Micah, who declared, "He has shown you, O mortal, what is good. And what does the Lord require of you? To act justly, and to love mercy, and to walk humbly with your God." Jesus taught justice, and he lived a righteous life. He helped the poor, he defended the weak, he challenged those who abused their power. And on the cross, he took the pain and the sorrow of all those who are oppressed. And he bore the guilt of all the evil we have done and the shame of all the good we have failed to do. And he gives us forgiveness and freedom, and he makes us co-heirs with him in his eternal kingdom. Sin was not a problem for Jesus. It had no personal impact on his life, but he saw that it was a huge problem for me. And so in love, he made his sacrifice to help me. So it doesn't matter if I have never been hurt by racism, because others are. And if the love of Christ is in me, then I must do what I can to bring change. As a church, we need to listen with humility. We need to act with love. And we need to pray with a hunger for justice.